So, what has Excelsior's domain been picking up from eBay? Let's have a look. Now, you would be forgiven for thinking that I had gone slightly mad, because this is indeed yogurt Greco Bianco. But of course I didn't buy this tub of yogurt intentionally. This was simply what an item arrived in, much to my bemusement. Funny story about this item is that the item itself cost less than the postage required to get it to me. Quite a lot less actually. Because this came from, I think it was Italy. And what is contained within here is quite an unusual little Terrahawk toy, because it is in fact the relatively rarely seen Hudson. And Hudson has a clever acronym attached to him, which I can't remember, but basically you get it shortened to Hudson. And this is a Popy Bandai toy. You may or may not be able to see, it's written incredibly tinily there, but it is in fact a Terrahawks Bandai Popy toy. And it came on a card back, which unfortunately I don't have. I've been speaking to a gentleman who picked up a nice lot of Terrahawks toys and probably put them up on eBay, which is kind of what I thought would happen. And he did have a card back one, but it was, I think his Hudson was still loose. So this is a nice example to pick up, and it was such a random thing. I don't think the seller knew exactly what it was, because they didn't actually, they called it Terrahawks and sort of Popy Bandai, but they didn't call it Hudson. So I think they just read what was on the underside and just put that as a description basically. So yay for me, because it meant I was able to get one relatively cheaply, because it was simply available, from abroad. So the plus side was that it arrived in one piece and obviously well packaged. The other plus side was it wasn't named, so it was relatively cheap, and I didn't have to get in a bidding war for it. So that was all good. Now, next piece of Terrahawks goodness that I picked up recently was part of a little haul. This was a funny little haul because it started with this. Now, when I say it was a haul, this chap had sort of 4 pieces of merchandise up and running. So I was bidding in sort of quick succession, trying to pick them up. This was the one that went for the most, because as you can see, I finally have a decent version, I say decent version, decent example of a Terrahawks Battlehawk. Now, slight irony is it seems to be missing its little ramp in the front here. I'm not quite sure that I really noticed that, but the description did say it was missing a couple of, it was incomplete. So I thought, well, fair enough, but for the price, it wasn't a bad example at all. And it has its wings front and back intact, which beats the previous version that I had, that you may recall was this. And you can see just how many random stickers have been plastered all over this one, bless it. And how discoloured it is on the front compared to what it should look like there, being quite silvery. Now, when I'm feeling brave, I will actually try and extract the little black ramp from inside this Battlehawk and transplant it. What I will also need to do, because this is the only other thing that is missing, is try and transplant one of these engines onto this, because the only thing that's really wrong with this one is that it's missing an engine here. Now, that is moderately critical because this engine would have opened this door. I'm not even sure I can get into it without having that access available to me. So I'm going to have a little think about how best to do that, and I'm probably going to have a look at a toy ploy video. This one does seem to have the sort of the pickup hook intact as well, and as you can see, it's quite nice and clean on the bottom as well. It's in nice shape, and it hasn't had all these random stickers slapped on it, which I'm quite happy about. So, purely from a display point of view, because you wouldn't have to see that back element there, that will display really nicely. So I'm very happy that I managed to pick it up. But I got my head in the zone for this particular set of auctions, it has to be said. So let me just, I'll leave these sort of the more recent pickups on the right hand side here, so you can continue to have a look at those. Now, I should mention at this point that I have now discovered something about the Battlehawk auctions that for a long time I've been sort of quietly dissing on eBay, because I've been saying that they're ridiculously overpriced. But I've now discovered a possible reason why they might be priced like that. And what you are paying for, it would seem, is this. A badge. Yes, you're paying thousands of pounds for a badge. So my understanding, again from the gentleman who'd picked up this lot of Terrahawks items on another auction, he noted to me that there are 2 releases of Battlehawk toys out there in this sort of packaging. So, you wouldn't distinguish them particularly from other Terrahawks. But I noticed that the one that he picked up from auction did not have a badge on it. But by the same token, there didn't seem to be a depression in this sort of polystyrene packaging for the badge to sit in, which I thought was a bit odd. And I thought, well, I could always, if I did happen to win it, I could always take a badge off something else and put it in there to complete it. But no, apparently the early release Terrahawks, the early release Battlehawks, now I've got to get this right around, did have the badge in them, but there weren't, we assume that release didn't last very long. So that early release had Battlehawks with badges in the box, but the subsequent release did not. So the one that he picked up was of a later release that didn't have a badge in. And it seems that if the early release was more limited in numbers, that explains why the ones that do have a badge on eBay are going for much more, because the majority of them presumably did not have a badge in the original box. So that may explain why those ones are viewed as being harder to find, therefore worth more. Whether or not to the tune of thousands of pounds, I'm not sure. But, that is obviously what some people are seeking and looking to get. Now, again on the upgrade front, this was the first example of the small, well, I must say small, it's larger than the battle tank that comes with Battlehawk, but it's the sort of relatively small battle tank that would otherwise slot underneath Battlehawk like that and be dropped into combat. But this one was always missing the Zeroids, I think they're called the Megazoids on the top of the battle tank, possibly. But anyway, I was missing them, and I would have quite liked a more complete version of it. So happily, in amongst that eBay battling that I was doing, I picked up this version. And as you can see, it's more or less the same sort of condition overall, but it has got the sort of the Megazoid caps on top of those buttons that you can press down. I don't think pressing down the buttons particularly does anything that I can see. It just is. So yeah, so that was a nice little sort of upgrade pickup to get there. I don't often upgrade, but when I see something like that where the seller wasn't, putting them up at crazy prices to start with, I thought, well, the odds of anyone actually getting into a bidding war with me on that were probably fairly low, and I was correct, so so much the better. Now, again from the same auction, so I was on a complete roll at this point, and other people were probably getting sick of me, such as they were bidding against me. I picked up this. Now, I've shown you one of these in the box before, but I didn't have one that was just loose. And the one in the box is so tied into the box that I thought best not to take it out. So I finally got hold of a loose one. You can see all these random stickers again that people have put on them, but they gave you these sticker sheets in the boxes. So, it was kind of asking for trouble, basically. But this is a nice example of an unboxed Terrahawk, which is normally would sit in a very, very small version, obviously, on top of the Battlehawk like that, on this little slot here. So there's the space for it, but I've yet to get a Battlehawk that has the small Terrahawk. That's one of the reasons why, again, people might prefer to get a boxed version, because they will come with a small Terrahawk. And the Terrahawk's wings can bend at this sort of elbow joints here and here. So again, it's quite a doody little thing. It's got a couple of sort of pterodactyl legs that hinge, and it can just sort of prop itself up on a hillside and observe what's going on. Also got missile launcher points there, and it did come with some missiles. And apparently it's some sort of lid that says real decals. So I'm not quite sure. It looks like somebody's just randomly stuck some Terrahawks stickers onto there, but I think these are Terrahawk missiles. So let's just try these out. See if they'll fit in there. Possibly. Terrahawk missiles. There's definitely potentially some tension in there, but I'm not entirely convinced. I mean, the only other thing they could be is, no, yeah, it's trying to shoot it, but it's possibly not quite. I'm a little bit worried about putting too much pressure on it. No, it's definitely that one side definitely wants to shoot, the other side not so much, and it wasn't going to click in. So I don't want to put too much pressure on it, obviously. But yeah, it's a nice little toy. I think it's probably a little bit fragile. I suspect the wings probably had a tendency to snap off. That doesn't look like the world's greatest hinge, but it's quite an interesting idea that it would be sort of able to sort of slow itself down as it came into land like that. You sort of use that almost as an air brake, and then you just sort of plonk it down and it would sit on the hill quite happily. So that was not the end of my successes on that day. I remember this like it was yesterday because it was quite funny. I thought I'd bid for this, and then my eBay app sort of suggested that I hadn't bid for it, so I panicked and I was trying to bid again, and then the screen sort of popped up to say that I'd won it. So I'm not quite sure whether it was my first or my second bid that won it. But here's the really funny thing about this. This I got for the princely sum of £30. Now you might think that's a lot for an old game, but it does actually work, and I'm about to try it in front of you to see what happens. But guess what? The next cheapest one was up for on eBay, and has been for some time, and probably still is. £1,500. I bought it for £1,470 less than that, because quite frankly, I don't think anyone's buying it for £1,500. But that is the sort of bonkersness that seems to ensue when people put Terrahawk stuff up on eBay. So the guy who I was talking to about some of the things that he had up, which haven't actually come through yet, so there'll be yet another Terrahawks pickup video in due course. But the ones that I got from him, he was selling at pretty much sort of sensible prices. And in fact, he had a nice, his Battlehawk sold predictably quickly because he wasn't putting it on at a stupid price. I actually think he got a very good, I know how much he got for it, he told me, I won't share with you, but I know that he made a good wad of his original sum back on it. But I think he did he actually accepted an offer on it, which I think was the right thing to do, because I think had he not, it could have stuck for ages. But I think he was really, really sensible to do that, because there was no saying when someone might have picked it up otherwise. So I'm just take a couple of LR44 batteries there. So I'm just going to see if I can get this playing for you, because I did put a couple of batteries in it. Yep, and it is definitely, yeah, and you can see that. There you go. Now then, sound on. Okay, no sound at the moment. That looks like Zelda's Mars base. Left, right, attack. It is. There is sound. I've got no idea what I'm doing, of course. I've got absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I can just go left and right, apparently. Okay. But that is the sort of game that you would play in the 80s. Looks like it's frozen now. Oh look, looks like I've got 3 lives. I've got 3 little Battlehawks up the top right there. I have no idea. I think it's frozen. Oh, select, okay. Okay. All right, I'm back now, apparently. Oh, now I'm dead again. But there you go. So, 30 quid for a working Terrahawks LCD game, bless it. So, gotta love it. Just totally random pick up that. It does make me chuckle for some reason. See, I don't actually know if you can switch it off. I might just have to keep taking the battery in and out of it. I don't know why. Funny. I might actually try to do that now while I remember it, because otherwise it'll just drain the battery quietly, I imagine. There we go. Battery's out. Okay. Now that was nearly everything. Now that was the end of that auction. I still couldn't believe that I managed to get all the bits and bobs that were out on that auction. I honestly thought that somebody was going to enter into some sort of massive bidding war with me over the game. Because the way the other one was priced, I thought maybe it's a really sought after thing that doesn't come up very often, but apparently not so much. Now, this is how this one came. So somebody went to a lot of effort, bless him, to shield the original bubble on this pickup. And this was one I'd been looking for a little while, and got for a very decent price actually. This one, thinking about it, you often see people putting these up for about 40 quid on eBay. But I picked them up from toy fairs and indeed from this particular auction for less than that. I don't think people are particularly looking for it, so I wouldn't really expect to have to pay that much for them. It's just a question of biding your time as much as anything else. But here we have Space Sergeant 101. This, in my experience, is one of the harder ones to pick up. You don't see as much of him as you do Sergeant Major Zero. But it's in it's in pretty decent condition when all's said and done. There's a slight bend on the card, but he's firmly in his card, and the card isn't actually too badly discoloured either. So, he is basically just another Zeroid, just like Sergeant Major Zero, but he looks after Space Hawk. So as you can see, he doesn't even merit his own little... he gets a bit obscured by Sergeant Major Zero, which is quite funny, because in the series, their hierarchy is a bit like that as well. So the only figure now that I don't have, although I need a slightly better Hawkeye, is Mary Falconer. And Mary Falconer escaped from the most recent set of auction items before I could grab her, unfortunately. But I will soon be able to, I hope, show you what a full set of these sort of major Terrahawks items would have looked like, which is quite good fun 40 years later. I don't think I'll be doing too badly if I can actually manage that. Oh, before I forget, there's one other little thing that I picked up as well, which you might have seen me display before now, but it's this little guy. So before I got my actual complete Battlehawk, I had this little complete Battlehawk. This is just a little wind-up Battlehawk. I've got a little wind-up battle tank as well, though it's in somewhat worse shape than this one. But again, this was one of the little sort of more pocket money toys that you could pick up from the Terrahawks toy range back in the day. And again, this was one a lot cheaper than some of the others I've seen on the eBay of late. So I thought, given that it was complete and it wasn't missing any bits and it was just nice and clean, I thought, yep, I shall grab that. So it's quite a nice little representation of Battlehawk as well, just because it's a bit sort of cheerful. They've actually still tried to make it look like Battlehawk. So fair dues to them. You can't say fairer than that, really. So when all was said and done, I was quite happy with that as a sort of a range of Terrahawks pickups in this day and age. And I still can't believe that I managed to pick up Hudson, because I knew it existed, but I just hadn't ever seen it. So I was really surprised when I saw one just loose like that I could just pick up. Incidentally, Hudson should have been able to roll out of the nose of the Battlehawk. So if you saw my earlier Battlehawk video, you'll know that I was complaining somewhat about the scale of Battlehawk, but you can see that this highlights the slight ridiculousness of the scale in the range as a whole, because this large Terrahawk is obviously never going to fit on the large Battlehawk, and if it were going to have any chance, the Battlehawk would have to be much, much bigger. And equally, there's no way that Hudson is going to fit in the Battlehawk either. So everything is very out of scale with everything else. In fairness, the Hawkwing and stuff maybe scales all right with things like Treehawk and Terrahawk, but the Battlehawk just doesn't work because it's the big mothership. So unfortunately, that's sort of the one downside to the examples as a whole. And I showed you that larger action Zebraway before as well when I was showing you the badge. And again, obviously that's got nothing to do with the actual vehicles. So again, that's just it's in a scale all its own, that one. So that is it for Terrahawks for the time being. But as I say, I do have a couple more items coming. I'm still humming and hawing over whether or not I should commit to a Mary Falconer or whether I should try and find one at a toy fair. But if I want to have a complete set to show you, I probably should get her sooner rather than later. But anyway, that is it for today, and I will see you again before long. If you've enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe as ever, and I'll see you soon. Cheers for now.